You're a true Renaissance woman, I gotta say, because you've worked in pricing, product marketing, restructuring, investing, and now you're the queen of billing. So what's the common thread here? What problem have you actually been studying your entire career?
You're the first person who's called me the queen of billing. I feel like I'm going to start using this as my moniker. I have done a lot of things in my career. Growing up, my dad was absolutely obsessed with the stock market, and he would always talk to me about companies. And it got me really interested in why are some companies successful and why are some companies not so successful. And I just became so interested in the problem of revenue growth. So much so that I went and I majored in finance and accounting, went and worked on Wall Street for a while in a variety of disciplines. So I think that the problem that's been very common across every single role that I've had has been revenue growth. Like, how do you grow revenue? And like, how do you do it across all the vectors of getting product market fit, changing your pricing and packaging, optimizing your pricing and packaging, creating the right sales plays, creating the right like commercial constructs for your sales team. So for me, it's like, it's been the chasing of growth of revenue.
I've been a CFO and finance professional in multiple sectors. And it's funny because if you ask any customer, no matter what you're selling them, like, what's your number one need? What would you like the most if we could do anything for you? Every one of them just says like more sales, more revenue.
Every function in the company, irrespective of its title, really needs to be thinking about. If you look at the most optimized companies in the world, there are companies where every function, irrespective of where it sits, like really thinks about like the accountability of revenue growth. An example I dealt with recently where like the legal team was being enormously accountable on making sure that an agreement was super well structured so we could get paid faster and that all the boxes were ticks and tied around like, do we have the right bank account? Do we have the right signatory? Right. And it's like, gosh, like this is like a lawyer who's actually driving revenue growth.
I love to see that. Shout out to all the lawyers not slowing down procurement cycles.
There you go. Seriously. Maybe somewhat uncommon, right? So
Now in your current position, you're the head of billing at Stripe. What does that position entail? It feels like there's a lot there.
the head of product for billing effectively owns the business outcomes for the product. So what that means is I own the revenue outcomes, I own the activation outcomes, I own resolving the user escalations, and everything that I do from a bigger picture perspective has to ladder up to that. So for example, I'm obviously accountable for setting the right product strategy, building the right prioritization matrix on what do we build, when, and why? What do we trade off? So, the day to day is really about turning the company strategy into decisions that drive growth for the business.
I love that. And I was so excited to speak with you today because we're both nerds when it comes to quote to cash. When we first met, I was like, this is somebody that sees me on something that is like so nerdy. And quote to cash, it's a loaded term. If somebody walked up to you at a conference and said, I hear quote to cash all the time, but like honestly, I have no idea what it means. How do you explain it to them? What's a clean explanation?
I've used this definition before, and some people are like, you've dumbed it down too much. But like for me, honestly, it is taking your pricing page or that secret spreadsheet or doc that you have with all of your pricing and turning that into money. The reason that I use this definition is I think a lot of people think that quote to cash starts with quote, which it sort of does, but actually starts a little bit before that, right? It has to start with you making sure that all the things that go on the quote can actually be transacted, right? And can actually turn into recognized revenue and can actually turn into collected payment.
So I'm gonna ask you to go through each layer with me, make me smarter here. But before we dive into that, is quote to cash a finance process? Is it a sales process, an ops process, or is it a product process?
If I have to go take like the most global definition and I had to pick one, I think it is fundamentally an operational process that necessarily has to have very heavy finance ownership because there is this layer of like, hey, you do actually have to get the money in the bank and the reconciliation process and RevRec and all those downstream processes. In a tech company, right, and particularly a tech company, and maybe like every company is now becoming a software company or a tech company, it is increasingly becoming a product problem because pricing and packaging necessarily, just given everything that's happening in the world, which I'm sure we're going to get to, sits with the product team. right? Your pricing and packaging is a manifestation of your product strategy, and having all of that go downstream into how that turns into money for the company.
I remember my friend Kunal, CFO at Gorgeous, he described it as the manifestation of your company's business model.
I very much agree with that.
So the first layer, I'm hoping you can illuminate for me, but I look at it as product packaging and pricing.
I think that's right. That's the first thing that has to happen. I mean, people have to invent the thing that's packaged and priced, but yeah, the first thing that has to happen is product packaging and pricing. I think that's right.
Most people think quote to cash starts with a sales rep creating a quote. I think it starts with somebody deciding how a product gets packaged and priced. So what are the biggest pricing mistakes you think that companies make as they scale?
The first problem is usually underpricing. And what I mean by that, like every business I reflect on that I've worked on in my career, and every time I've shown up to a business, there has historically been a large volume of users that are either not monetized at all or monetized incorrectly. It's really interesting when new people show up and they're like, hey, like, do you guys know that only 80% of your base is paying you? And everybody's like, well, yes, we can never charge those other 20%. It's like, well, really? Are you sure you can never charge them? Look, repricings are not fun and they're very hard, but they're also like material revenue generators for any company. Another problem that I see really common, which is also hard to solve, is I call it one size fits all pricing. Right? It's like you go and you develop a product and you're really excited about your product. And over time, your product market fit grows, right? And you discover so much more use cases about your product, and you have so many new personas that you probably did not expect flood into your product. And your product development lifecycle, many times will continue, but your pricing will often not keep pace, right? So you will now have this one size fits all pricing that you're trying to apply to all these different use cases. And it's typically not very aligned to how your users derive value. That results in not being able to grow your product as much as you'd like to. And then I think maybe like my third, and this is maybe my favorite one, because I'm a very process oriented person. As your company scales, you have to have ownership and processes around pricing. Like pricing and packaging cannot be a free-for-all at the company, because if it is a free-for-all at the company, you're going to have inconsistent discounting rules. You're going to have SKU proliferation. Your sales team's not going to know what to sell when. You're going to be under-optimized on these things that we just talked about. So like really giving the function of pricing and packaging structure, ownership, and processes as you scale is a really big difference maker.
Hey, founders and finance folks, you know how early on everything is fast and scrappy, and then suddenly equity gets messy? Spreadsheets break, grant docs pile up, lawyers are sending new forms and collecting fees. It all shows up right about when you're already swamped. Well, if managing your cap table feels like one more frustrating thing on a very long to-do list, you need to know about Pulley. Pulley makes equity management simple and stress-free. You can issue options, model dilution, complete 409As, and more. All in one place with support from real experts when you need it. So if you're raising, hiring, or scaling, Pulley keeps your cap table clean so you can stay focused on building, not wrangling spreadsheets. Learn more, request a demo at pulley.com/mostlymetrics. That is PULLEY.com/mostlymetrics.